Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We are back in here on this 1969 Nova with the LS swap. It has the Magnuson Supercharger on top. We got a few things to button up on this car to try to get a first fire up out of it. We had to make one fuel line. We were a little bit of line short. Pretty good little amount of various wiring, just a wire here, a wire there, you know, our fans, a few keyed sources, some fuse links we need to put in. Nothing too wild. We've got a couple things we've got to hunt down. We've got to find a 1/8 inch MPT extension for our engine coolant temp sensor for the supercharger, and we've got to go hunt down some number 8 AC line for one hose to the compressor. We did get our seals in. We got the high pressure switch and the AC compressor wired up this morning. We're about to hop in the car and try to knock out some of the wiring in the dash, get the little gauge for the boost, the supercharger coolant temp set up on the dash. So I guess we'll probably have to get the dash pad in to be able to do that. I did order some vacuum line this morning, but I ordered 1/4 inch and it turns out it is too big for what we need. So we're gonna have to get a little bit of vacuum line to run from the boost block up to the regulator. But for the most part, we are in the home stretch of this thing. We've got our event at the end of the month, and then he's got another event he's trying to meet at the beginning of August. So we're gonna try to get this thing roadworthy and ready to go, so we can go back to him and he can finish his interior and trim and all that stuff on the inside. But let's dive back into this thing. We're gonna button up some wiring and bore you guys to death with colors of the rainbow. And hopefully by the end of this episode, we'll hear this thing fire up for the first time. Alright guys, so we put in a few hours on this thing. Good handful, really. We got that fuel line made and connected. We got the harness back at the fuel pump loomed. We got our grounds in the front ran down. We got our E-fans wired up. I still got to get down and hook the grounds up on the frame and the core support. I did run out of 10 gauge wire. Got to get that number 8 AC line. Oh, and I got to get a little bit of vacuum line. The vacuum line I ordered some 1/4 inch and it's too big. I think we're going to need like some 3/16 or something, or 5/32. We got to go get that stuff or call down and have it ordered, either one. But we did get his boost gauge. So he ordered it's actually a triple gauge setup that we mounted up on the dash for his supercharger. And it shows boost, coolant temp, and exhaust temperatures. But we're not running the exhaust temperatures. We wired up his sending unit right here at his reservoir where it comes out of the supercharger. That way we have an accurate reading of what the blower's at. That's going to go straight to the gauge, so he'll have supercharger coolant temp on a gauge. And then we've got a boost sensor down on that boost block that we put down on the firewall over on the passenger side that goes to that gauge as well. But we did get that installed, put up on the pad. We got the dash pad put in too. We got to put the screws in it, but it's set in place and locked in the way it's supposed to be. We ordered a nice pre-wired fuse and relay box. We're going to mount it up over here with the BP fan relays under the dash on the driver's side. That way it's easily accessible. And then of course we'll make a layout of however we wire it up. That way it's easy to diag. Even if it comes back here, it goes to somebody else. It's easy to diag if there's ever a problem or we need to dive into wiring on this thing. We had to identify the injectors for the Holley system. That way we're putting in the right data. So we took the borescope. We got a couple pictures of those. I've still got to run the numbers, but they are Decas. I'm going to assume they're probably Deca 80s, but you never know, so we're going to run the numbers on those. But really, other than that, we're getting down to where like we've got a little bit of the Holley Terminator wiring left on the inside, and a few little odd and end things to just button up and bolt up and fasten. And then we've got quite a bit of wiring that needs loomed up, but I'm kind of waiting until we hear this thing fire off and run before we loom everything. Once that fuse block gets here this afternoon, we pick up some 10 gauge wire and some vacuum line. We're going to dive back into this thing probably Thursday or Friday and try to get it buttoned up and try to get a first fire off on this thing. I mean, we're this close, man. We're just a few hours away, for sure, just a few hours away now. The list is getting smaller. We've got 3 things on the list that have circles next to them, and the things on the list that have a circle next to them means that needs to be done in order for this engine to start. Not for the car to go home, but for the engine to start. And then we've got another little handful of things that we've got to do before it's ready to go home. But we're going to dive back into that Thursday or Friday. We're about to pull off of this and push fish stick in here and put the motor in that for you guys. By the time y'all see this, that episode will be out. But we are going to pump the brakes on this for just a second. But next time you see me, we'll be diving back into this thing. Alright, so we're over here wiring up a fuse block in this Nova. We ended up adding another fuse block that has 4 relays and 12 more fuses. That way he has a few extra fused outlets, and we can run a fuse for both his switches right here. They're going to be by the start button, and just make sure that everything's fused and relayed the way it should be. I did have a standalone circuit built ready to go for the crank side, but I decided to go ahead and take that out and use one of the relays in the box for that. We got that taken care of, and then of course this coolant pump will run on its own circuit up front as well for the supercharger. So I'm working on getting all this wired up right now. Still got a little bit to do, but it's not too crazy. But if we can get this wiring done up, we got a vacuum line up front to do, one coolant fitting to put in, add some fluids to this thing, and maybe try to get some fuel in it and bang this thing off one time. So I'm going to dive back into this. We got Sammy over there working on a Ford Expedition. Grand old time, let me tell you. Alright guys, so we are back in here working on this 69 Nova, trying to make some leeway on this thing. We got all the wiring done, minus, the car's been sitting right here in this bay for the last 2.5 or 3 months. And nobody realized there wasn't a key in the ignition. The ignition was turned on, but there was no key in it this whole time the car's been here. So, the customer does have a spare key. We've looked everywhere. Nobody remembers taking a key out of it, and when we bring cars in the shop, the keys stay in the ignitions. We'll drive our window down. It's like a cardinal rule of pulling something in the shop for this reason. What we did was we bypassed that and we just went ahead and wired our keyed fuse block to a switch that we put in as an auxiliary switch. So we're just going to use that to turn the Terminator and the fuel pump and all our accessories on for now. Once we have the key, we'll find our keyed source wire and we'll get the signal from there. But as of right now, we're about to load a file in this Holley Terminator X Max. We've got our base file, you know, our injector sizing, all our sensors picked and everything. We're about to load this thing in and see if we can't get this thing to fire off and do what it's supposed to do. Been a long time coming, but we're ready to share this with you guys. And we're ready to hear this thing come alive and run. So Sammy's up there installing a map sensor and capping off a couple boost lines so we can set our fuel pressure at the regulator. And then we're gonna start running some key on tests and get some fuel in the tank, make sure that everything's coming on the way it's supposed to, and then we will go from there and fire this thing off. Alright, so we got this thing fired up. We have some belt alignment issues that we need to address. A couple wires down here that are too close to headers for me. I still got to get the drive shaft in this rig. Alright guys, so it's been crazy for the last couple weeks around here. We have been working on this thing, putting in a lot of hours on it. I just haven't had time to film because we're getting ready to do our carnival ride. Our second annual carnival ride out of George Ray's Wildcat Drag Strip here in Paragould, Arkansas. Been time being delegated in other places at the time, but we are back on this thing today, and I'm going to try to catch you guys up a little bit. Got the fuse block put on the inside, the dash wired up, we got the gauge wired up for his boost and his supercharger coolant temp. We've got everything plumbed, everything's ready. At this time we have done a first fire up on this thing. We'll go back to that here right now. Now it's pretty much cleaning a few things up on the harness on the inside, mounting the cluster up, mounting the switch panel with the Holley display mount up, and pushing this thing over to the rack. We've got a small fuel leak down at the filter on the rail, and we've got to get the drive shaft in this thing. And like I said, I got some wires I want to tie back away from the headers, a few things like that. The biggest obstacle here was when I went to load a file into the Holley system, this ECM and setup had been shelved for so long that the firmware and the hardware, or the firmware and the software, were out of date. So I had to go in and do a hard reset, calibrate it off the SD card, and of course all the systems that we've installed have been ones that we've ordered for customers. They were new in the box, and they come up to date. So we had to figure that out, but we got it figured out. We got this thing, a tune loaded in it, we got it fired up. We are going to make some base adjustments to fuel, and then we're going to enable self-learning and try to get this thing to where it's happy. We got to add some transmission fluid. We've kind of just got a small list of, it's a pretty lengthy list, but it's all small stuff that we've got to do. So me and him are about to dive into this thing and try to knock some of this stuff out. We got a bunch of wires we got to loom. We got to get the front bumper back on it. We got to bolt these fenders up all the way. The goal is to have this thing parked in next to our booth at our show this weekend and kind of display it as a work piece. It's still a work in progress. He's still got to get his interior in and get all his trim and his door handles and all that stuff put on. But as far as the swap and the drivetrain, it'll be able to get fired up and drive down the road on a bucket if you really wanted to. We're about to dive back into this and get after it. We are having trouble finding a certain size AC hose, so we're actually probably just going to take the other line off and put the block-off plate back on the back of the compressor and call it a day until after the show we can get back in here and try to find some hose. But I'm having a hell of a time trying to find it locally, and I'm not having very good luck finding it online, so I may just have to reach out to Vintage Air and see if they can't send us a section of that number 8 hose. Alright, so I've got a little bit of wiring I've got to tuck up in the dash from the Terminator, but I've got everything else just about tied up. You still have to wire the reverse lights up to the input and output on the car. We do have it hooked to a switch right now, so when you flip this on, everything comes on. You can hear the fuel pump in the back. Dakota Digital comes on. His boost gauge comes on. Our Holley comes on. Now we're going to try to fire this thing off and see what it gets us.
my God.
Got Sammy in the mousetrap.
God damn it, dude, my finger's stuck.
Yeah, you're gonna have to. We need a screwdriver.
Yeah.
You gotta stick a
No,
screwdriver
we
in.
ain't gonna be able to get a whole. Hang on, we ain't gonna be able to get nothing past there. Give me a screwdriver. Will you grab me one out of the top of his toolbox?
Sammy got his finger stuck in there. It's really easy to do, actually. She moves. Yeah. It's a motherfucker, dude.
Damn, boy. Ow.
I've done it about 5 or 6 times.
Come on, bitch. Give me my finger. Oh.
Hey.
Let me look at this here.
It's just a little flap in there.
It's just a little flat.
But if your finger slips off of it, it'll. And it's like once it's got you, it's got you.
The mouse trap.
Door's locked too.
Oh.
You set me up. You set me up for failure.
Did I? I don't do that very often though. Shit. No, I really didn't set you up though. Y'all, we got this thing ready to go to the show. Just got to put the hood back on it. We're about to do that now. Then it's ready to go. Alright, so we got rained out this weekend at our event. Customer took the car home. We got some interior in here. Carpet laid down. We did take the cluster back out. We've got to add a module for the CAN bus to go from the Holley to the Dakota Digitals. And Sammy's doing the duct work for the AC system and the HVAC. And then we got a few other things to do. We're going to adjust his front coilovers for him and bring the front end up a little bit, gain him a little bit more clearance in there. But it's really just small stuff at this point. Here's the module we got. So this plugs into your Dakota Digital module. And then this is a splitter for the CAN bus for the Holley. So that'll be nice. Got a QR code for the manual on there. I like that. So pretty excited to check this thing out. We're having trouble getting the speedo working along with some other gauges on the dash. So I'm going to do this and try to set it up. Get it all working the way it's supposed to. Maybe some leeway in here.
Yeah.
Alright, so Sammy's working on getting the AC ducts back in that car. I just did a tune on the maroon truck out there. It's ready to go home. Now I'm about to do some tuning on this old square body that we finished up the swap in. This black one. We had all the injector issues with in that one episode. About to get all our AC duct work back in there. Sammy got all that in. Got the little bit of wiring tied up for the AC up here under the dash. Capped off a vacuum line on the map on the Holley system. Just gotta put the cluster back in. Got with the guy that 3D prints our stuff. So I have him address this. First time it got hot, sitting out in the parking lot. It warped real bad. Now he's running the main power and ground back here to the battery. So I get this thing over here on the freaking rack and adjust this coilovers. Raise the front of the car up. I'm not a suspension guy, but I guess we're gonna try it today. Maybe this thing will actually be able to roll around and move under its own power and not rub the front fenders off the car. And then we've got headlight wiring, a tune. I think that's about it. Should have this thing finished up tomorrow, ready to go home though, if all goes well. Oh, and the brake light switch. The one that's on the brake pedal itself is demolished, so I'm gonna have to run a couple wires out here and run them to that. So we got some wiring inside done. Got the headlight switch mounted up. Got the headlights wired up. Everything loomed. So let's put the wiper motor in now and getting it bolted up to the arms. We're getting the ducts behind here. Getting all this calibrated and set up took us a little while. Still waiting on the 3D print guy to get with me on that. But we've got brake lights now too. I just got to get it over on the rack and get the coilovers adjusted. Alright, so we got one of them hopefully raised a little bit. See what it looks like. Yeah, go ahead and measure it. See if it changed at all. We were at 23 3/4. I feel like it changed it. It's right here.
Make sure it's disconnected. Where were we at? 23 3/4?
Yep. That's 24.5 right there. So if we go roughly about twice that should put us about where we want to be. See, that's about what we started with. This thing got the wheel woods on it, American Racing wheels. Alright, let's go ahead and do this side. So,
Alright.
So I think we're gonna have to. You see, want to turn the wheel?
Yeah, I might be able to get at it from right here.
We can turn that one this way.
Alright, no, we don't turn the wheel.
Alright, go ahead. There you go.
Yeah, there we go. We can go ahead and measure the threads on both sides while we have it up.
Well, I'll go ahead and drop the one on this side all the way down there. But we can count the threads, like run the lock nut all the way down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Got 8 showing. Run this thing all the way down real quick. Okay. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 showing. Oh shit. So we're about to take this thing down, do a road test, some tuning on it. This shit right here got me a little nervous, I ain't gonna lie. Way too much wheel spacer on this thing for it to be deemed safe. I'm talking. Four inches. It's a little sketchy in my opinion. We're gonna hit these with a ratchet, make sure they're tight. And hope for the best, I guess. I see another 1 inch in there too. Alright, so we're gonna fire this thing up and go around the block. Running on 20%, ramping up to 50. USB link this thing. Alright, we're gonna pull the gauges up on the Holley because for some reason we still don't have the gauges we need on the dash.
She's old, you gotta be rough with her.
That's right. 59 pounds of fuel pressure, we got 45 pounds of oil pressure. Our AFR is riding pretty decent right now. It's already ran some self-learning at an idle and up to about 1700 RPM, just moving it around and such. So I've kind of turned the self-learning down from 50% down to 20% and in that RPM range, and then from there up we're still at 50%. We're gonna go try to drive this thing around and see how it acts and see if it's got some pretty decent street manners. We got up to 204 degrees on our engine temp. Reverse. Not really happy with the brakes on this car. We might need to do a couple of small lock pulls to make sure it's going to stop. It's got a locker in the rear end.
So what all gauges do we got on this Dakota Digital? We got a boost gauge here, I guess, and this
Yeah, we got boost and supercharger coolant temp, and then we've got battery, oil, which for some reason isn't working. I've got to mess with that CAN bus module a little bit. Looked like the RPM tried to move. Mile per hour is there, engine coolant temp, and fuel, which we know we've got fuel in this thing.
Then what do we got going on with this one?
Down on the Holley, we've pretty much got the same thing we've got up there minus speed, and these are actually working because they're coming off the Holley system. So after we tune it a little bit and get back, we'll mess with the gauges and see if we can't get it working. So there's reverse.
Sorry. Love you.
Alright, let's see if we can get out the gate.
Everything's looking good over here. We got 43 pounds of oil pressure, air temp's cool. Got good fuel pressure.
It's got some low gears in it though. Holy cow.
Set up for what, 8th mile probably?
Probably, yeah.
I don't even think we've been in the boost yet. It hasn't seen boost. But it's cruising alright.
Yeah, it's cruising pretty decent. It needs an alignment like crazy.
65 mile an hour right now. Got some rough roads, slow it down. good.
Yeah, it does.
We're still in self-learning mode right now.
Yeah, it should be collecting data right now.
And how long does that actually take for it to?
Usually about 15 miles or so is what it's rated at. After that, I've noticed on like the square body, after about 45 miles, it starts overcorrecting and it starts running worse.
Okay. So then, once you take it out of self-learning mode, is it still a self-correcting PCM? Like, say you're
no, it'll be set at whatever's in the tune.
Well, we made it back to the shop.
We made it back to the shop.
Man, I can hear that supercharger. But man, that cluster looks sweet.
Yeah, it does. Alright guys, well there you have it. We swapped this Nova, or finished swapping this Nova. Addressed a few issues that it had. We got it running, we got it rolling around, we drove it around the block a couple times. We did some self-learning, Holley tuning on it. We're going to dial that back some. It does still have a couple things that we need to address, like it's missing that number 8 AC hose, but there's a shop in Jonesboro that makes AC hose. So we're going to have the customer take the car there and get a AC hose made. And if he wants to bring it back and have us vacuum it down and charge it, we'd be more than happy to do that for him. The supercharger pulley is like one rib off, so it's trying to roll the belt. And we've got to get another one of those switch panels that hold the Holley 3D printed. And the guy that does our 3D print, he's tried making those the last 2 nights in a row for me. It's like a 12-hour print, and when it gets 11 hours through, it just trashes it for some reason. And I think lastly, the only other thing is we weren't able to wire up the windshield wiper motor. Don't know where the wires that come out and went over there went. I don't know if they previously got cut out before they got here or what. And we don't have a switch for the windshield wipers. So fortunately, I don't see this car spending a lot of time in the rain, and it's got some deadlines to meet. So it's the little stuff like this when you're building custom cars that sometimes you got to figure it out after you get to a show, or after the car goes and spends a week with the owner and spends some time at a couple shows. We've got the 2nd annual carnival ride this weekend, this Saturday, August 3rd at George Ray's Wildcat Drag Strip in Paragould, Arkansas. And then he's leaving out Sunday to head to Missouri, southern Missouri, I believe, or central Missouri. He's taking the car up there to meet with his grandfather, and they're going to go do this cruise and show type event. It's running around pretty damn good, actually. We're going to do one more kind of little check through on it, make sure all our odd and ends are good. We're going to check the trans fluid one more time, let it cool off, check the coolant, and we're going to try to do something with this blower pulley. One of our team members, Austin, has a Magnuson Supercharged C10, and he said that he's got a couple pulleys that we can look at and see if maybe one of them's not spaced a little different. Maybe we just happen to have the wrong one. So we're going to try to address that before we call it and send it home. But I think for the most part, that wraps it up. We're just going to end this thing with some more idle clips and us driving this thing across the lot, I guess. But until next time, smash that subscribe button. Let us know in the comments how you're liking the content. And we hope to see you this Saturday, August 3rd at George Ray's Wildcat Drag Strip for the 2nd annual carnival ride, hosted by us, 727 Motorsports. Come out, we got drag racing, car show, we got a cruise, and we got Booster Maze coming up from Tyler, Texas to show Northeast Arkansas what a real burnout is.